No man is an island unto himself. We thrive when we're together, when we can relate to one another, share experiences, develop skills, traits, hobbies, and surround ourselves with people who bring us up. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how I got sober. I'm going to give a little bit of a personal story of my struggle, and I'm going to tell you how isolation is killing you. So let's get into it. So I talk about addiction and recovery. I'm 1 year sober, entering into my second year of sobriety, and I'm seeking to maintain a sober lifestyle. Getting sober for me isn't a one-time thing, it's a lifetime. And I want to emphasize that sobriety is, for me, it's a lifestyle. And getting sober required that I changed everything. One of the biggest barriers that prevent people from getting sober is thinking that we can do it by ourselves, that we can do it on our own. That was my biggest mistake. I struggled for 20 years. Most of those years, I didn't think I had a problem. And for some of those years, I probably didn't have a problem. I managed my addictions. I managed my substance and alcohol use. I lived a life where I was sustaining my daily operations and still functional. But then my addiction got to a point where I wasn't functional. And that shift was a gradual shift. It didn't just happen overnight. The shift occurred over a period of time. And I can't quite pinpoint the moment when my addiction shifted from being manageable to unmanageable, but I can pinpoint the time era. So for me, my addiction really became unmanageable when the lockdowns hit, when society isolated everyone from each other. I took that very hard. I wasn't able to adjust very well. I was already barely keeping myself afloat due to my own personal traumas, sorrows, griefs, and experiences in life that I wasn't handling properly, that I was just covering up with drugs and alcohol. And then when COVID hit, it shattered my world because I was a social person. I mean, I'm quite introverted, but I love my extroverted nature. I love being able to go out and have a good time with people and let loose. So I like going to nightclubs. I was playing events. I was doing live shows. I was very active in the scene every weekend, throwing my own events, working with people, collaborating, putting out releases, etc. And when the lockdowns hit, all of a sudden that came to a standstill and I was unable to live the lifestyle that I was living up until that point. 2020 is when my addiction snowballed. I started using substances that I wouldn't normally use because the supply became constrained due to the lockdowns, restricted travel, and I had to pivot to using drugs that I can manage to drugs that utterly crippled me. Getting sober, getting free from the bonds of these drugs was much harder, and the addiction compounded in isolation. So the isolation is what really drove my addiction to the next level. Addiction thrives in isolation, and the lockdowns facilitated an environment of isolation. And I remember I would still hang out with people during the first year of the lockdowns, 2020, and even a bit of 2021. But by 2022, I was devastated. I was done. 2022, I mean, it got to a point where these years just kind of blend together for me. And it was like the 3 year time span where it all just amalgamated into another phase of my life that I can't really pinpoint the details. I can't separate what happened when, because I was so high, I was so drunk, I was so out of it, I was so inebriated. So many things happened too. I lost a couple of friends to overdoses. Things were happening. People were dying from lockdown and COVID. It was a crazy time period. So I drove myself deeper into addiction just to cope with living in a society that isolated me from my family, my friends, my passions, my career. I was lost. I didn't know what to do. So if you think you can do it alone, I'm going to tell you right now, you're full of shit. You're not going to be, if you're in addiction, if you're in active addiction and you think that it's just going to magically cure itself somewhere down the line, maybe you're young. Maybe you think you have decades ahead of you and that at a certain point, you'll just automatically get sober. I'm here to tell you that's not how it works, because I thought that way. I remember being in my early 20s and thinking ahead into the future that, okay, at this age, I'll end up being sober just because that's what's supposed to happen. It's a rite of passage. I'm going to mature into an adult. That didn't happen. What happened was my addiction just grew and grew until it reached an unmanageable point and broke me, utterly devastated me, destroyed me, wrecked me. And I'm thankful to be alive, and I believe it's by the grace of God that I am alive today. So addiction thrives in isolation. And if we think that we can do this on our own, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. The first step to getting sober, to really getting free from the bonds of addiction, is realizing that I can't help myself, that what I've been doing up until this point has led me to this point in time, and I'm not equipped and qualified to fix myself. A problem can't be solved from the level of its creation. If I created the problem, if I created my addiction, if I furthered my addiction, how am I going to solve that addiction? I can't solve it from my own level. I'm incapable, because I'm the one that got addicted. I need someone else outside of my sphere of being to help pull me up out of the hole that I dug myself. So community is important. Family is important. Fellowship is important. A network is important. A friend group is important. Being part of something. So if addiction thrives in isolation, then recovery happens by being part of something. And it takes courage to be part of something. But when we're part of something, we receive a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, because we are social creatures. Now, you may not even be addicted to alcohol and hard substances like I was. Maybe you're just naturally isolated due to growing up in the internet era or the digital era, or you're a Zoomer or a millennial, and all you know is the digital world, and you've isolated yourself and you've crippled your social capability, and the only interaction you have is interaction online through relationships, parasocial relationships. Those relationships aren't real relationships. And they're never going to give you the sense of satisfaction, relief, and fulfillment that in real life, IRL social gatherings will give you. No man is an island unto himself. We thrive when we're together, when we can relate to one another, share experiences, develop skills, traits, hobbies, and surround ourselves with people who bring us up. Not tear us down, but bring us up to the next level. People who will trickle down positivity into our lives and act as guides for our future. I believe it's important to seek out a mentor figure who is older than you and has more experience than you and is successful in a way that gets you thinking about how you can mirror that success. Having this person as a model in your life to shape your future actions and to have as a way marker for where you want to be in the future. And you can't do that if you're in isolation. We can't do that. Isolation is practically killing ourselves. It's like a plant can't grow without water. A plant by itself can't survive. Tree roots grow together. They share the nutrients and they spread out amongst each other. They grow in a community. They don't grow by themselves. We're the same. When we're in isolation, we shrivel. Everything shrivels. So does our brain. Our neural networks shrivel when we're in isolation. Being in a social community setting, being around others, stimulates neurogenesis, synaptogenesis, and rewires our brain, because we're taking in all the information of meeting new people, and subconsciously or preconsciously, we're assessing everybody around us. We're assessing our environment for threats. We're reading people. We're trying to figure out the room. We're reading the room, the situation, and we're in our preconscious. We're also running through scenarios, potential scenarios that we might have to prepare for, be ready for. And we're also thinking of how we can interact with the people around us. What are we going to say? Hypothesizing scenarios, thinking. We engage our thinking when we're in a social setting. So there's a myriad of benefits to being social. And I wouldn't have been able to get sober if I didn't get out of my shell because when I was in active addiction, when I was at my worst, I was in complete isolation. I isolated from everybody, my family. People thought I was dead. People thought I was dead. And for all intents and purposes, I was dead. I was spiritually, mentally, creatively dead. I had lost my passion, my zeal, my love for life. But now I have it back after a year of full sobriety. I feel like I'm just starting my life again. If I can do it, if I can feel this after all the abuse that I put my body through, I'm certain that you can do it too. And that's what I'm here for. That's what this channel is about. To help others, to inspire others, to take the first step along the path to recovery. And it's the first step that's always the most difficult. I know, because I tried to get sober for the last 6 of the 7 years of my severe addiction, and I just couldn't do it on my own until I surrendered my ego, lowered my pride, and admitted that I needed help and asked for help, and actually went to a family member, asked for help, and then checked into detox, and then got myself into a rehab program. And now here I am living life, aiming for a career, going back to school. I'm doing well. And I'm the only reason why I'm doing well is because I put myself out into the world. I'm back into society. I'm part of a community. I have a fellowship, and I pray to God. I pray to God for guidance and that He continues to grace my life with His presence. Now, if you like what I talk about, check out this video for more.